voice of God calls us to awaken him when he comes. How will he find us when he comes?
Awake and ready.
And when he asks us to dedicate ourselves more perfectly, how will he find us?
Awake and ready.
Let's pray together. Divine Mother,
Divine Mother,
Heavenly Father,
Heavenly Father,
friend, beloved God,
friend, beloved God,
Jesus Christ,
Jesus Christ,
Babaji Krishna,
Babaji Krishna,
Laduri Mahashaya,
Laduri Mahashaya,
Swami Shri Yukteswar,
Swami Shri Yukteswar,
our beloved Guru,
our beloved Guru,
Paramahansa Yogananda, and saints of all religions,
saints of all religions,
we humbly bow to you all.
we humbly bow to you all.
Great Masters,
Guide our lives,
help us to dedicate ourselves,
ever
more perfectly,
at
your lotus feet.
Om.
Lived in many countries and mixed with many men.
I've shared the days of sunshine, nor we've been in the rain.
The fires at evening said we were brothers. The fires at evening said we were brothers.
A soldier I saw weeping beside a dying friend. My officers had said I must hate him till the end.
But seeing his grief I knew we were brothers. But seeing his grief I knew we were brothers.
A man sat on a doorstep to see the children play.
The gentle way he smiled and would charm your fears away. A stranger he, but love made us brothers. A stranger he, but love made us brothers. One day I climbed a mountain with friends of other lands. The words we used were different, but joy one understands. Our gladness in God's world made us brothers. Our gladness in God's world made us brothers. Though words and customs vary like waves upon the sea, one life beneath the surface binds everyone to me. Who knows the truth knows all men as brothers. Who knows the truth knows all men as brothers. And brothers, why endeavor to set ourselves apart? The fences we've been building squeeze tight upon our hearts. Come sing the truth that all men are brothers. Come sing the truth that all men are brothers.
Let's close our meditation with this reading from Affirmations for Self-Healing by Swami Ananda. This week's reading is on discrimination. As science judges the relative speed of any object by one constant, the speed of light, so the devotee judges the relative merit of any idea by the one constant, God. Discrimination is clear only when it relates everything to the eternal absolute. Thus, while the intelligence may toy with ideas endlessly, discrimination asks, is this wisdom? Is it of God? True discrimination is not even the product of reasoning. It is soul intuition. Reasoning, even from the highest point of reference, is uncertain compared to the inspirations of superconsciousness. To discriminate clearly Meditate first. Ask God to guide your understanding. And let's repeat this affirmation together, first out loud, and then more and more quietly. Resolutely I quell my inclinations.
Resolutely I quell my inclinations.
That my mind may be open to the wisdom guidance of my soul.
That my mind may be open to the wisdom guidance of my soul.
Resolutely I quell my inclinations.
Resolutely I quell my inclinations.
That my mind be open to the wisdom guidance of my soul.
That my mind be open to the wisdom guidance of my soul.
Resolutely I quell my inclinations.
Resolutely I quell my inclinations.
That my mind be open to the wisdom guidance of my soul.
That my mind be open to the wisdom guidance of my soul.
And now mentally only, but with great power. Resolutely I quell my inclinations. That my mind be open to the wisdom guidance of my soul. And mentally pray, guide me, Lord, that in all things I know thy will, for I know that only by thy will are all things led to perfection. Om Peace.
Now have the reading from the Rays of the One Life. This is week 28. Self-Reliance versus Self-Reliance. Truth is one and eternal. Realize oneness with it and your deathless self within. The following commentary is based on the teachings of Paramahansa Yogananda. Last week we considered the need for attunement with God, with the gurus, with the wisdom of others, until we make that wisdom our own. There is a strong, and in fact valid, belief nowadays in the need for standing on one's own feet rather than depending weakly on others to carry us by their strength. Swami Kriyananda was once asked, "What is the best yoga posture?" "That one," he replied, "which sets you squarely on your own 2 feet." Our strength must come from within. If that strength comes from the ego, however, instead of from soul consciousness, it is like a guitar string without its sounding board. The notes it emits will be thin and feeble. Our strength must come from within, but must be coupled with recognition of our inner link with broader and higher realities. The Bhagavad Gita says in the 10th chapter, "Everyone in this world whose life is glorious or prosperous or powerful, know that his achievement is but a little spark from the great sun of my effulgence." Jesus, in talking to his disciples, emphasized also the power of attunement with his own consciousness as a ray of the divine. For this ray had descended already through him in response to their devotion. It was a sign that God was already listening to them with receptive attention and did not require to be wooed in that way any longer. In the passage preceding the one that we read last week, Jesus said, "I am the true vine, and my Father is the husbandman. Every branch in me that beareth not fruit, he taketh away. And every branch that beareth fruit, he purgeth it, that it may bring forth more fruit. Now ye are clean through the word which I have spoken unto you. Abide in me, and I in you. As the branch cannot bear fruit of itself, except it abide in the vine, no more can ye, except ye abide in me." This was the meaning of Paramahansa Yogananda's counsel also, when speaking more intimately to the disciples of the need for attunement with him. Thus, through Holy Scripture, God has spoken to mankind.
I'd like to share with you a reading from Whispers from Eternity, Prayer Demands and Poems by Paramahansa Yogananda. And I also invite you to not only listen to the words mentally, but really try to feel the vibration of this message in your heart. As our Guru Paramahansa Yogananda said, that through whispers I will eternally speak to you. And today the reading, the bee of my mind loves to drink from thy blue lotus feet. O Divine Mother, the bee of my mind is ever engrossed in thy lotus feet of blue light. It drinks the honey of thy motherly love. This bee will drink no other honey but that which is graced by thy perfumed sweetness. O Divine Mother, flying over the gardens of my fancy, denying myself the honey of lesser pleasures, I have found at last the ambrosia buried in thy lotus heart. I have been thy busy bee. I have soared through the fields of many incarnations, breathing the airs of countless experiences. I will roam no more. Thy fragrance has quenched at last the perfumed thirst of my soul.
I'd like to welcome everyone here today. It's such a great joy to be here. My name is Nayaswami Devarshi. I'm here with 10 Ananda monks who originated from 5 different countries, from our monasteries in India, America, and in Italy. And we've been on pilgrimage, traveling and serving, and just it's such a great joy to share the light that we all receive with many others. And this is a duty that we all have, and I will touch on this today. The topic today is self-reliance with a big S, the higher self versus self-reliance with a small s, with the ego. And we think the ego as big, but it's really, compared to the infinite, it is so tiny. And you see this, I think, especially when people who are really egotistical, you just notice how small it is compared to the infinite, compared to the great saints and masters. And what this reading is about, as it finished with, is the power of divine attunement. Attunement is simply tuning our consciousness to the divine in some way, to the great saints or masters. It is really, in the end, it is the whole of the spiritual path. I will read something Swami Kriyanandaji wrote in his book, Sadhu Beware. Attunement, I am convinced, is the first and greatest need on the path. It is the only way to find God. He rarely spoke in such absolutes, in black and white and either or, but he says it is the only way to find God. The essence of the spiritual path is attunement. God uses those who have found him, not to impose his will on anyone, but to bring seeking souls back to oneness with him. Without attunement to the Guru's consciousness, the ego cannot even think except within the limitations of ego consciousness. Renunciation alone will not take anyone to God. Prayer and meditation are not enough to get you there. Nor is institutional affiliation, nor even signing up with the right guru. In every great guru's ashram, there are a few disciples who have achieved spiritual depth, and others who are still spiritual children. The Guru shines his light equally on all his disciples, but not all of them are equally able to receive its rays. And so what he is saying is that true inspiration, enlightenment, freedom, the power to know God, comes through the instrument of an enlightened master. Yoganandaji, one of the great statements in his book, Autobiography of a Yogi, is that thoughts are individually and not universal, or thoughts are universally and not individually rooted. And what he's saying is that any thought that we have, we think, oh, I had a great idea, with the emphasis on I sometimes. But all we did was we tuned in into a great idea. Every thought is already in the universe. Every invention, it's all already part of God, just as we are already part of God. We didn't create ourselves any less than we create a thought or an idea. We tune into it, just like a radio receiver tunes in to the radio station. And it's not just only with thoughts, it's with inspiration, it's with enlightenment, it's with wisdom, it's with divine bliss. We don't create any of these ourselves. And the more that the ego, the little ego, is asserting itself, God very quietly and humbly just goes quietly away. And we'll come back when we make ourselves a little bit egotistically smaller and invite God into our lives. And this is the power of attunement, is tuning our consciousness to the great ones. When we do this day in, day out, then we start to change. Swami Kriyanandaji said that he realized when everything was the power of attunement to his own guru, Paramhansa Yoganandaji. He said that at that point, he said when he started lecturing, he tuned into his guru's consciousness so much that he felt like the entire lecture hall was filled with his guru's consciousness and his guru's magnetism. And there are people who have testified and said that when they saw Swamiji speak, they saw Yogananda behind him filling the hall with the power of God and the power of the divine. This is the way of all the masters. Even Yoganandaji, even though he was an avatar, already enlightened, he too had to go through the instrument of his guru to receive that experience of samadhi. And so this is the way of God, the way of the masters. I will say, so I'll read something that Yoganandaji also wrote about this. Krishna, Buddha, Jesus, these great ones manifested the highest quality of magnetism. Every time I see an image of one of the great ones, or think of them, I get their vibrations. When I contact Jesus, I feel the consciousness of God as the Father. When I think of Ram Prasad, who was a great Bengali lover of Divine Mother, I feel the vibration of God as the Mother. This attunement with Divine Ones does not come about merely by thinking of them for a few moments. This is very important. It is only by meditating day after day on a great saint that you will begin to receive the spiritual vibrations of that saint. So it's day by day, constant attunement, that we get their grace, their vibrations, their liberating power. At the end of this life, whether if you're in India, the Lord as Yama will come to bring you to the next step. In Christianity, St. Peter comes and will take you to wherever you're going. It's not just heaven or hell. There's a lot of different gradations and variations. And I've often thought that at the end of this life, if you've been really tuning yourself to the Guru's consciousness, constantly making them your friend, holding their hands every day, as Yoganandaji said, constantly praying to them, you can confidently say to St. Peter or to Yama, I'm with them. Where they are, just take me there. But if you haven't been doing that day by day, you're really probably only saying, well, I want to be with them. But if you're already with them in your heart, in your lives, in your consciousness, praying to them daily, constantly tuning into them, talking to them, bringing them with you into your heart, into everything that you do, you will find that your magnetism changes, your aura changes, your consciousness changes, and you become essentially one with them. And this is the goal of the divine path, of our spiritual path, is to so constantly tune into the consciousness of these great ones that our consciousness becomes one with them, and therefore one with God. Now, this passage from the Bible about the fruit, the branch must abide in the tree, the vine, in order to bear fruit. And this other part, I think maybe was last week, I am the vine, ye are the branches. And I've been a gardener for many years, and I've studied gardening and the science of plants and how it all works. And what I've seen is this analogy can be taken to another step that's very, very important regarding this whole science and understanding of divine attunement, which is that, yes, the water comes up through the roots of the plant and up the vine, up the trunk of the tree, and out to the branches carrying water and sap and nutrients. But it's not a one-way street, in a way, because also the branch has leaves. And those leaves receive the light of God, the light of the sun, prana, life force. It receives that light. And it also sends that energy back down the branch to the plant, supporting the plant and giving the plant life. And for a fruit, in order for a fruit to appear, it's not just the vine or the trunk that has to be there. The leaves also have to be there. If a tree, if you cut off all the leaves after the fruit appears, the fruit will shrivel up and die. And so, in the same way, this is one of the great truths of the spiritual path, is that it's a two-way flow. The Guru and God gives to us, and we must receive, and we must be in tune with that power and that grace, but we must also give back. And we must also give the light that we receive, give gratitude, give love, give service, give everything of ourselves. And when we do this over time, you find that we're, as Swami Kriyanandaji, to use an analogy, where the trunk of the tree ends and the branch begins, you can no longer tell the difference because they are all one. The trunk and the branch, they are giving to each other. And when you receive love from God, when you give love back to God, over time, it no longer becomes you and God sort of far apart, kind of sending love across the ocean far away to God, and then hoping that it reaches you and hits you in the right spot on the other side of the ocean. You become closer and closer till there is no separation. And you will find that giving love and receiving love, it's all one. There's no separation there. And you are in that love. This is why Swamiji, he said, when you pray or meditate, he said, don't pray to God. He said, pray in God. Don't meditate on God, meditate in God. Because we are in that. And this again is the power of attunement, where Swamiji said that by the end of his life, he said that he had practiced this so long and so deep that he couldn't tell anymore where his thoughts ended and Yogananda's began, because it was one. One time I asked Swamiji about this power of attunement because I wanted to know whether what I was doing was correct. And I felt that by practicing love and devotion to the Guru, that it would open my heart and I would be able to receive the Guru's grace and blessings there, which was my practice. But he said, yes, that's good, but there's more than that. He said, don't feel there's any separation. Feel that you and the Guru are one. That it's not you here and him out there. Feel that your aura and the Guru's aura and consciousness are merging in deep inner communion and becoming one. And you'll find again that receiving love from the Guru, from God, giving love to the Guru and to God, it starts to merge into just being in that power of love, of divine grace, of divine bliss in God. And this really is the trick that the Guru does to us, because we come onto the spiritual path, well, I think of just about everybody here because of what we were going to get out of it. We read Autobiography of the Yogi. Samadhi bliss. Yes, I want Samadhi bliss. I want that. I want peace. I want freedom from stress. I think everyone in this room could go around and say, I wanted this, I want that. And that's the trick that the Guru does. I sometimes call this a bait and switch. It's a sales tactic where you trick the buyer into thinking they're going to get one thing and they get something else, but it's just the way to get them in the door and just to entice them in. And then you tell them the truth, and by then it's too late. And that's for us. We've come onto the path and we were tricked. Let's face it. We came because of what we were going to receive, and I'm only half joking here. Because after a while on the spiritual path, and this is one of the great walls that people hit on the spiritual path. I think everyone, to some degree, hits this at some point. Sometimes extremely, and some people never go past it. Which is that at a certain point, we can no longer just take and receive. Because if all we ever do is ask God, I want this, I want that, it becomes me, 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 and it starts to become a contractive way. And what the Guru is asking is to give of ourselves, to give love, to give service, to give devotion. And so when we start practicing that, you will find that suddenly your dry meditations, your mechanical technique practices suddenly become alive with this devotional self-offering that Swami Kriyanandaji talked about. I probably have said this, quoted his 1,000,000 times, and I'll probably say it 1,000,000 more times if I live long enough. But he was talking about Kriya Yoga. And he said that every Kriya I see now, after 65 years is when he said this, every Kriya should be an act of devotional self-offering. And Kriya is a technique that we practice here. And he was saying that every single practice of that technique should be an offering of ourselves, of giving to God. This is what devotional self-offering is. It is simply that giving. And when we give ourselves with every Kriya, but also with every action, because Kriya, the word, Sanskrit word Kriya, it's the same root as the word karma, which is action. And I think what Swamiji would say, even by extension, if every act in our lives, every action we perform, we act as an instrument of God, of the Guru, giving to others, serving others, we find that even in that very moment, we become free. Swami Kriyananda once said, someone asked him, what is the qualification for an Ananda minister? And his answer was very simple and very surprising. It wasn't going to some 4-year college and becoming a doctor of divinity. Yoganandaji said that the DD degree, many of them were doctors of delusion, because they didn't have God. They had intellectual understanding. And he said the real main requirement was very simple. He said that the main qualification is that when one is going through tests, through karma, through suffering, that one still thinks of giving to others and serving others. And that is an expansive heart. That is a heart that is free from self-limitation and contraction and self-identification. And this is a heart that is always thinking of giving and serving, giving love, giving support, giving strength to others. And you will find, as I have found, that that is the quickest way to free yourself from suffering, from pain, from karma. I had an experience many years ago, I wrote a blog about it recently, where one day I was having extreme pain in my side. It was getting so intense that getting worse and worse through the day. And my wife, Maria, at that time, she passed away some years ago, but many of you knew her many years ago. She convinced me to go to the hospital because it was getting severe. And we went to the emergency room on a Saturday night. And emergency rooms on Saturday nights are very exciting places. There's a lot happening there. A lot of people have shot each other, stabbed each other, gotten in fights, gotten drunk, and did drug overdoses. There was a lot of action. And so I was sort of a minor case. And so they put me in this room that was about this big. And there was beds around the room with many people there. And all I could do was contract. You know how when we have extreme pain, it's contracted. And I think that's what's more painful to the yogi isn't the physical pain, it's the fact that it contracts our consciousness. It makes us smaller when we're used to being much more expansive and one with the infinite and one with divine bliss. All I could do was be in the fetal position, kind of hold on to this pain and try to protect myself. And then I heard something that was going on in that room, and there was a young couple there. And there was a woman who was trying to help her boyfriend, and they were maybe 17, 18 years old. And all I could hear was her pleading with him not to die. And from hearing the doctor, he had had a drug overdose, and he was in a coma, and she was just pleading with him, come back, come back. And the doctor was very concerned, and my heart went out to them, and I just began praying for her, that she'd get through this test and rise above it and become free. I prayed for him that he could be given one more chance to get it right and to get past this karma that he had. Almost instantaneously, this pain became divine bliss. I just felt so much freedom and so much joy. And I don't even know what happened to that boy, because I was wheeled out of there pretty soon. And about 2 weeks later, I had my gallbladder removed, which is what this was about. And it was the best trade I've ever made in my life. My gallbladder for a great, beautiful, inspiring lesson. And that lesson, again, is to give, to expand, to serve. And this is the way out of our own suffering. Find somebody, if you're in deep suffering, find someone who's suffering more than you. And try to help them, uplift them. And you'll find that this is the answer. This is what the Guru is asking us to do, is to give, receive, until it all becomes one. I'll just end with a very short story. There was a woman, disciple of Yogananda, who was visiting Ananda village. And she was from South America, and she was just about to go back to her home. And she was praying deeply to Yogananda. She had a work that she did with her life, a service to others, working with nature and helping others commune with nature and respect nature and the environment. And she was praying to Yoganandaji, what do you want me to do when I go back? How do you want me to do it? And she just was trying to understand how to do her life's mission. And she was at the Expanding Light at Ananda village in a tent. And Yoganandaji appeared in front of her tent in form. And he answered her prayer. And his answer was amazingly short. It was one word, 4 letters long. His answer was, give. That's all he said. And of course, she, on her heart, she understood. She had to figure out how to give. But she truly understood that all she had to do was to give. And by giving, you will find that when you serve others, when you give to others, that there's, especially in a divine way, acting as an instrument for God and the Gurus flowing through you, you will find that there's this divine intelligence that starts to flow through you. And you're giving, the form that your giving takes starts to become intelligent and become informed. And you start to be guided to act in the right ways. And even to say the right thing without having to use the reason, and without having to use the intellect, just using the heart, the intuition. When we give to others, serve others, then the way becomes clear, and God works through us, rather than this little ego trying to figure out and doing it from the little self. We start to act from this divine self. And so this is the way of attunement. This is the way to divine freedom. This is why when Swami Kriyananda was asked, how did you reach such a state of freedom, and what is your sadhana, your spiritual practices? And he said very simply, my sadhana is Guru Bhakti, devotion to the Guru, Guru Seva, service to the Guru, and meditation. And I think he would probably say that even his meditation, it was an act of giving service, giving love, rather than just me, what I'm getting out of it. And so think of this almost as a divine dance, giving and receiving love, giving and receiving service, until it all becomes one, and we're all in this state of divine love and divine bliss. This is the way of attunement, and this is the way to divine freedom that our great masters have been teaching us and trying to get us to understand. So may their grace always be with us, and may we always feel them flowing through our hands, through our hearts, through our voice, as we give to them and as we give to others as their instruments. Om, all peace. Amen.